everybody, welcome back to my little corner of the internet where I will talk about the stories of my life, my work both as a comic book author and translator, my cats Hey Hey, Serengeti and Conidela, my latest perfect session, and the occasional movie, book or TV series review and recommendation, as well as some rants if the feeling hits, all while I draw. Nowadays, it's very common to read people complaining that Hollywood has no new ideas, that they are completely dependent on remakes that didn't need to be made because they are ruining classics from the 80s and making them woke. That is also said whenever a foreign movie is remade with American actors, changing a local story from the country it was made and Americanizing it without any care for what the original was trying to say, and then the other side complains about cultural appropriation, and let's be honest, I am on that side more often than not, and it's a lot of complaining. But all that leaves aside that, on one hand, remakes have been part of Hollywood's history even before Hollywood was Hollywood. And that the truth is that even cultural remakes are almost as old as movies themselves, and not exclusive to American cinema. India, in particular, has a long tradition of remaking movies from one region of the country for the audience of another. And that means that a movie made in 2005's Bollywood could potentially be completely remade with a new cast for 2007's Tollywood, or in 2012 for the Kannada or Malayan audiences, rather than just dubbing them. Although some are also dubbed and then remade, and I do not understand a lot of Indian industry yet. I mean, I want to, that is my current imperfection, but it's complicated. But then the question is, how much of a movie is changed and how much is kept in these cultural remakes? And why do they do that when, at the end, both languages are spoken in India and they are all Indian nationals and the culture is very similar from one region to the other? Well, I can't answer the second question with certainty, as I am not Indian nor I live there, so tiny or big cultural differences may be completely lost on me. However, I can answer the first question with one very interesting case study. Oh, and before we go in, trigger warning for discussions of sexual assault against a minor. Because yes, these two movies are not easy on that subject. So, let's talk about the Kannada language film Durgi and its Telugu remake Narasimhudu. I am completely butchering these names. Durgi was made in 2004 in Karnataka, and it's a Kannada language movie. Here's where I have to admit that the language barrier for research is a bit difficult for me to overcome, because information on the movie in a language that I can actually read is sparse. As in Wikipedia stuff sparse. So most of what I will tell you about it will be about the movie itself and my opinion and thoughts about it, rather than about any behind-the-scenes stuff. What I can tell you about it is that the movie was written and directed by P. Ravi Shankar in what was his debut as a director. That Ashish Vidyarthi plays Shankar, the Deputy Police Commissioner of Bangalore, and that name is quite important because that man has appeared in many movies with Ram Charan and Tarak, because he has acted in Bollywood, Tollywood, as well as in Kannada, Malayalam, Odia, Marathi, Bengali, and English films made in India. The man has about 300 roles between 11 languages, and he's one of my favorite character actors in the industry so far. More important than Ashish, however, is the real star of the movie, actress Malashri, who is known by her fans as Kanasina Rani, or Dream Queen, after a movie she starred in 1992. But then let the nickname fool you. She was the Dream Queen, but in 2000 she had decided to reinvent herself after an acting hiatus and marriage to become an action star. And boy did she do an amazing job at it! Getting now cast more in angry woman roles and recovering the fame she had in the early 90s when she had some flops. What is amazing, at least for me, is that Malashri was allowed to age as an actress. Where in the 90s she was a very similar body type we see in heroines, by the time of Durgi she had put on weight, and had, of course, aged out of the sweet dream queen she was in the 90s. and the movie makes no attempt to make her fit a more Western idea of beauty. She's big, she's loud, well, in part of the movie, we will talk about that when we get to the plot, and she's not a man-hating woman who needs the right guy to be fixed. Her character does not have a romantic arc in the movie, another big change for usual action films, let's be honest, but she's still considered a catch and beautiful by many, and I, for one, am here for more heroines like her. All hail the Dream Queen, that's what I'm saying. In any case, Durgi made a good enough box office, so a year later, Bigopal decided to direct a Telugu language remake under the title Narasimhudu, written by Ravi Shankar again, but this time starring Junior NTR, or Dear Tarak, as well as getting Ashish Vidyarthi to reprise his role as a police commissioner. Only that, for some reason that I do not understand, the man was dubbed by a different actor, despite the fact that Ashish does speak Telugu. There are things about the Indian cinema industry I do not understand yet. Now, why was the movie remade instead of dubbed? That is an excellent question. Especially because years later, in 2008, it was dubbed to Hindi under the title of Main Hook Durga, as well as into Malayalam as Vashmasuran, a year after Narasimhudu had been dubbed to Hindi as The Power of Narasimha. And this was not because Narasimhudu was a huge success in the box office. In fact, it's considered one of Tarak's flops. That year was also the year that Naaludu, a comedy starred him, failed to make a big success, although I honestly enjoyed Naaludu a lot and I will probably talk about it another time. Then again, what I have found of critics' reactions to Narasimhudu when it was released points to the fact that the problem was, well, the opposite of what has happened to certain Hollywood remakes like Ocean's 8 and Ghostbusters Answer the Call. That is, because they changed the main role's gender, only that this time it was a woman in the original to a man in the remake, it lost something that was actually important. Like in Ocean's 8 and Ghostbusters Answer the Call, where the gender of the main character should not matter. But that's a rant for another day. Because you see, the plot in both movies is one that we have seen more than a couple times before. It's a person looking for revenge after the rape and murder of their little sister. And we have seen that with a male protagonist 1,000 times, all over different genres, all over the world. Usually it's because they raped my girlfriend, but the idea stands. All due respect to Tarak, who in my opinion rocks in the role and is one of the best actors in Tollywood, the whole man getting revenge because someone touched what is his has been way overdone. Durgi, by making Malashri the heroine, but not making her the victim of the rape, did something different. More importantly, it let Durgi be as violent and savage as any male character would be in the same situation, and thus gave the audiences something new, again because Durgi had not been the victim of the rape. This is not to say that Durgi was a huge success, of course. What little I have found is that it got mixed reviews too. But enough about the actors. Let's talk about the stories. And since they do repeat the main points, I will start by describing Durgi, using Durgi's characters' names, and then just mention what was changed or added to Narasimhudu when we get to those parts. Okay? Okay. Once again, we're going to go more or less in order, so if at any point you hear something that really calls your attention, that's when you hit pause on this and go and watch the movies. I believe both can be found at Intuition TV, which is a very good free service for streaming Indian movies of all languages and does not sponsor me. But Durgi and Narasimhudu begin the same way, introducing a new police commissioner, Raikar. She's Vidyarthi in both versions, although we never find out his name in Narasimhudu, who gives a very impassioned speech to his new co-workers about how terrible the corruption in the police department is and how he's going to stop this by getting the two biggest criminals in the city. In Durgi, this is even clearer as he has a list of how many bribes everyone in the room has taken and how angry he is that people don't respect the police because of it. After that, we get to meet the two criminals in question. One of them, JD, looks quite civilized and works with his son in order to get a high political position, while also using his influence to murder and intimidate anyone who gets in his way. So, a politician. Marigudi, his rival, is a more bombastic character who is easily influenced by television and has a whole troupe of actors kidnapped at his mansion so they can put makeup on him every day and sing hymns to his actions all the time. He and his second in command go and kill a young man and his family while they are doing prayers to the gods, but before the child dies, he threatens Marigudi, warning him that the gods will send punishment from heavens ready to destroy all evil on earth. As if we needed any better introduction, we move to a bus where a soccer team starts harassing a girl and are immediately thrown off the bus by our heroine, Durgi, who takes off her coat, uses it to cover the girl, and then promptly beats the whole team with her bare fists. An older man tries to stop her, but with one look, she makes clear that she's not going to let those men go. She doesn't say a single word, and she won't for a long time in the movie. In fact, she's going to be identified as mute. But she managed to beat the whole team in, and only stops before killing the leader when the police arrives to arrest them all. You do not disrespect women on Durgi's watch. It is then when we find out that the man with her is her grandfather, the woman is her grandmother, and as I said, she's mute. After the commissioner lets them go, since the girl Durgi defended and her mother came to testify that she did not start the fight, they are welcome in the community where the girl and her mother live, so they can have a place to stay in the city while they find some work. This is where the first real change between Narasimhudu and Durgi happened. While in Durgi it makes more sense that the commissioner laughs at the idea that Durgi beat the whole soccer team, being a girl, there is no change at all in the scripts between both movies. The commissioner and the bad guys are introduced the same way. The lines are the same. Narasimhudu also helps a girl who is being harassed by the soccer team, and they also end up arrested and later welcomed by the family he helped, and he is also mute. Why the commissioner laughs at the idea that Tarak managed to destroy a whole soccer team, we never get an explanation to. But where in Durgi we meet the community in a joyful song number that it's about how they all just wait for water and share it when it comes, in Narasimhudu they're being threatened by dogs, and stopped by the arrival of Narasimhudu and his family, making one of the local girls fall in love with him immediately. And so our very first song is her fantasizing about how much she wants to be his girlfriend, and she plots ways to get to know him no matter what. In fact, every single song number in the beginning part of Narasimhudu until the interlude are about how much this girl wants him, even if he never shows any interest in her outside her song imagination spots. While all of Durgi's songs are about the community where she's staying, leaving every comedy beat to the people who are completely separated from Durgi and her story to the point that they could have been very well from a completely different movie. Also, there is a bit of spoilers in the songs because the songs, being the imagination of the girl, include Narasimhudu talking. So, put a note on that. I said that the comedic bits in Durgi seem like they are from a completely different movie, but the romantic subplot of Narasimhudu is not better. At this point, we have no idea what the plot is yet, but once we do, the whole thing of the romantic story is very out of place. And, as I mentioned, the fact that Narasimhudu sings in those numbers gives less impact to his muteness in the rest of the film, even if it is only because the girl is so enamored with him that she never figures out that he's mute. Seriously, she just looks at him and falls in love and then forgets to actually ask anything about him. Also, the fantasy spots are incredibly well produced and choreographed, while the community songs really feel as if it's just the community singing. So, even as much as I love Tarak dancing, and you guys know I love Tarak dancing, I feel that Durgi did a lot better with those songs as introductions to the place. In any case, this is when our plot starts, and Narasimhudu goes back to just recreating Durgi, as Durgi and Narasimhudu go out that night with a weapon, but are stopped once again by our restless commissioner. Durgi's grandfather managed to avoid Durgi getting arrested and the commissioner seeing the weapon, and when they go back to the room where they're staying, he warns her that if she ever takes out the knife that she's carrying without his approval again, she will be in dire trouble because she's not the only one looking for revenge. A tiny change between the two movies is that in Durgi, her grandfather and grandmother are incredibly angry whenever Durgi goes on her own, while Narasimhudu companions tend to be more of the quiet anger type. Not that either Durgi or Narasimhudu care for their feelings in this sense. Oh yes, our plot thickens. The very next day, Durgi and her grandfather and grandmother go to a fair where a minister, Mandi Betapa, is holding a campaign rally for the next elections. Among the people being cheerful, Betapa happens to notice Durgi and her family and begins panicking. It comes to the point where he runs away by going into a Ferris wheel ride with a bunch of kids and dies from a heart attack caused by sheer fear. Yes, this is how badass Durgi is. We still have no idea why she was hunting Betapa, but all it took was her glaring at him at a distance for him to keel over and die. Betapa's death causes a power vacuum, and thus now Raul, JD Song, has the majority of votes. But Mariguri decides that his own brother would be the new candidate from his party, and in order to create sympathy for him, creates a bomb attack that kills 4 of his men and forces his brother to pretend he was hurt on it. But while Marigudi is organizing the press conference to talk about his brother's injuries, Durgi and her grandfather infiltrate the hospital, and before anyone realizes that they are there, Durgi kills Marigudi's brother. A man comes to the colony where Durgi and her grandparents are staying, and after some misunderstandings, meets with Durgi and her grandfather, and they send him away. But the thing is, he comes from the same village as they do, and brought money for them after he read about Marigudi's brother's murder. This shows that whatever Durgi is doing, it's being supported by her village as she tears up seeing him go. The only real difference between Narasimhudu and Durgi up to this point is that the man who comes looking for Narashima, because it's easier to call him that, pretends to be a fortune teller and, upon meeting the girl who is completely in love with Narashima, plainly tells her that her love for the man she lost after will never come to fruition, as the gods tell him that his heart, that is Narashima's heart, is already taken by a woman who is prettier than the heavens, pointing more to the other romantic subplot added to Narasimhudu that I mentioned before. Other than that, the movies are still identical, up to the fact that we still have no idea why Durgi or Narasimhudu are killing those men. In any case, as Durgi and her grandfather are on the way back to the colony, they happen to see Raul, who is without bodyguards despite his father's warnings, and Durgi follows him to a nearby cinema and kills him in the men's bathroom, also being recognized by him with fear before she punches him to death. However, the police commissioner is near, as he was informed that Raul was there and Marigudi's men were also near. So Durgi's grandfather hides them in the multitude in the cinema. Unfortunately, the police commissioner orders the crowd to leave in one single line so he can check everyone. In order to fool him, Durgi's grandfather first separates himself from Durgi, claiming that if he sees them together, he will suspect. And once he's alone, kills himself by electrocution so that the panicked crowd will take Durgi away before the commissioner can see her. Even so, the commissioner recognizes his dead body, and furious decides to go to the colony directly and arrest Durgi's grandmother in order to figure out what is going on. Since they have clips about the murders, he decides that, of course, Durgi has to be the murderer. And he's right, actually. But the grandmother is not cowed. Upon learning of Raoul's death, she begins to laugh and claims that no matter what, as long as Durgi is free, all of them will die. It is only then when Durgi herself appears, and, despite her grandmother's pleas for her to leave and escape, walks to the commissioner, and to everyone's shock, she speaks up, introducing herself as Durga Parmeshwari. And now it's time for a flashback that will explain everything! Two things before I start. First, here is where the real difference between Durgi and Narasimhudu shows hard. Before, all that was added were the fantasy spots of that girl who is in love with Narasimha, but script-wise, there was no change between what Durgi did and said and what Narasimha did and said. It's only here in the flashbacks when they become really different people. So I will have to go with Durgi's stories first, and then Narasimha's in detail. Second, remember I mentioned trigger warnings? Well, here they come out in force. Seriously, here's where I remind you that if you don't want to hear about sexual assault happening to a child, this is your time to leave. I won't hold it against you. Okay, so Durgi used to live in a small farming village and was well known both as a rowdy, that is sort of a gang member, but in her case she was not violent against anyone in the village. She was just rowdy and quite athletic, to the point that in the village festival she wins every single trophy for sports. On the other hand, her younger sister Ningi, who is all of 12 years old, wins all the scholar trophies, making the two sisters the most popular women in town. Their father is quite proud of Ningi, but worries that Durgi will never find a husband with her strong personality and tendency to beat everyone. Durgi doesn't really care about that. All she wants is to be happy with her sister, her mom, her dad, and her gang of friends. But one day, Rahul, remember, the minister, and another businessman come to the village, interested in building a sugar mill as part of their business. They bump into Durgi, who is seriously not impressed by them. And thus Raoul, who has never heard no, decides that he wants to show her a lesson and put her in her place, and makes a plan to force her to come to the house where he's staying so that he'd be able to have her alone, asking her father to get food cooked by her. Unfortunately, it's the same day that Durgi was planning to go and watch a movie with her favorite actor. Her father forces her to stay and cook, but Ningi, seeing how disappointed her sister is about missing the movie, volunteers to take the food to the politicians once it's made. This doesn't end well for Ningi, who is beaten by Raoul, angry that his plan to get Durgi didn't work. And then we are spared of the details. Ningi is found later by Durgi, unconscious, beaten on the river, and obviously bleeding profusely from between her legs. As they take her to the hospital, it's revealed that she was raped. This renders her father catatonic, out of shock, but Durgi is determined to get the responsible jailed, as Ningi managed to whisper that the people in the tourist bungalow were the ones responsible for it. However, by the time she and the villagers arrive, Raoul and his accomplices have escaped. Thanks to their connections, they buy the doctor's silence, making him recant his original diagnosis of rape. To make sure that Ningi cannot contradict them, they suffocate her with a pillow. And just to make sure that there are no witnesses, kill Durgi's father too. This, of course, makes the whole village fall into shock. But when the inquiries are done and the dog claims that Ningi wasn't raped, but in fact that her bleeding was caused by a fall, Durgi cannot contain her anger anymore and kills the doctor. She's arrested, but the cop who does so takes her away and confesses that not only he knows who raped and killed Ninji, they also paid for him to kill Durgi. She escapes, and then the flashback ends, making clear that she has been looking for those exact men in order to avenge Ninji and her father. Shocked, the police commissioner at first wants her to stop, telling that he will bring Ninji surviving rapists to justice because blood for blood will never bring true justice. Durgi, however, refuses. There are only 2 men left in her list, and she is going to get them. But now let's move to Narasimhudu. Narashima is also from a small farming village, but he works more like a general handyman for them. Especially he goes to markets and sells the harvest from all the village. We find out that he is an orphan, although he lives with a specific family whose daughter, Chiti, 11, treats him like a brother. When he and his friends are coming back from selling the village harvest, he meets the town new MRO and his daughter, Subu, and falls in love with her at first sight because there is no Tarak movie without a romantic interest. While he's trying to get Subu to fall in love with him, trying and succeeding because he's very charming, it's revealed that Narasimha is listed as part of every single household in the village, all 365 of them. While the minister and MRO insist that this is fraud, the village explain that they never get extra rations from Narasimha, and they do so because his parents sacrificed themselves in order to save the village from a flood, leaving Narasimha as an orphan, while he was also trying to save the village and stayed in the dam that was about to overflow. So ever since then, everyone considers him a part of their family. This, as well as his charm and desire to help everyone, makes Subu fall for Narasimha finally, and they begin dating. See what I mean about a romantic subplot that was added to the script? None of this is in Durgi. In any case, the plots go back to the same road. Rahul, whose name here is only JD's son, comes to the village in order to organize the creation of a sugar mill, and it's Subu who catches his eye. Instead of asking for her to cook for him, he requires her father to give him some documents and manipulates everything so that it will be Subu the one who has to bring them to him. Because it's the same day as a town festival that would be a blessing for any future marriage, Chiti tells Subu to go with Narasimha as she takes the paper to Rahul. And well, the same tragedy as in Durgi happens exactly the same way. The only real difference after that is that once that Narasimha escapes from the corrupt cop, he's found again by Subu, who makes him swear that he won't utter a word until he has avenged Chiti and her grandfather, explaining his muteness during the first half, something that never happens in Durgi. But let's be honest, did we ever need an explanation for a silent, ruthless revenge seeker? Not me. Selective mutis due to trauma is as good as an excuse as any. I have to say that, while Narasimhudu has a more polished production, gorgeous musical numbers, and the always entertaining Tarak playing one of his most adorable characters during the flashback sequence, really, watching him interact with the children in the village is a joy on itself, Durgi is the better movie. By focusing on the revenge plot without any extra sub-stories, and letting Durgi be angry in a way that female characters rarely get the chance to be, without a man to help her or fix her sadness, gives a story that is very rarely seen in Western cinema without also pandering to the male gaze. Isn't it sad that the closest that I can think of is I Spit in Your Grave, which, it's not a movie I'd recommend anytime soon, and one that is very male gazy towards the rape survivor. So if you can, watch Durgi first. Then later, if you want, check out Narasimhudu, which, while being a good movie, it falls a bit short of being a good remake. It is, however, an interesting remix. I want to thank my dear patrons Mitch Hyman, Elaine Ho, Jessica and Ali Riley, as well as my first supporter Tania Pineda and the most amazing Amy Sunk, without whom none of my videos would be possible. I also want to remind you that if you want to support these and my other projects and get your name mentioned here, you can do so at patreon.com/Annalisa, written link on description, as I know my name can be hard to spell, and with just $1 a month you can always be thanked in my videos, as well as get access to a ton of art before anyone else. and get the chance to suggest future subjects for videos. You can also support me through Coffee, and for each coffee, you will get mentioned in 3 future videos. If you can't support me this way, I also accept likes, subscriptions to the channel, and of course, you sharing the links. I also welcome all your questions, feedbacks, and suggestions in the comments below. This was Analisa Zarate, and I will see you soon so we can grab another cup of coffee, or perhaps as we're still on Tollywood, a cup of chai, and talk about the love for one's country and one's family in Govi Dundu and Daribadele.